just how I'm feeling, though I never wanted you another way. But baby, it's been on my mind, and you know my face can't hide it. So take my hand and hear me when I say, don't you know that I'll be there for you, with a love to get you through the night, yeah. And I'll be there for you when everything is out of sight. You got it, baby. One more time, you got to get it right and walk it while it's life with you. And honey, if you're diving, I'ma get you by, but you're already live.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a chronic issue with toothpaste in the house. This goes out to all the people out there that they got kids, man. You know what I mean? And I'm in a consistent situation where every tube of toothpaste is capless at various stages of use. And you have to like fully like scrape it down the side of the sink in order to work anything toward the top. And then as soon as I leave the bathroom, somebody comes behind me and apparently works all the toothpaste back down to the bottom of the tube, which is perverse. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to the podcast. It's a fine Tuesday evening. I'm sipping on my mega Blickman cup. It's got a sticker. It says Blickman underneath it as well. But yeah, listen, welcome to everybody in the chat. This is episode 67 of the Adam Makes Beer podcast. Today we're going to be discussing managing conflict in the brewery. I think it's going to be interesting to roll through. This is not something that I have always been the best with. And I don't know if I'm, a mega ace now, but there's definitely some things that I've learned over these 48 wasted years of mine. And I listened to an interesting podcast that got my brain turning on some stuff. So we'll kind of dig through it and see what we can pull out of it together. For everybody that's in the chat, please make sure to drop any questions, comments, anything in the chat. If there's any topics in particular that you want me to talk about surrounding this whole thing about getting better with conflict, I feel like I could spend the majority of the time talking about ways that I've handled it poorly in the past. I'm one of those, in the past, I've been one of those silent people. I'm definitely a communicator. But for some reason, sometimes it's something that gets me wound up. But listen, you don't feel like getting wound up. You feel like having no conflict with somebody? Better call my friends at Blickman. Starting a brewery is a big step. Blickman Engineering is here to help. Since 2006, they've equipped hundreds of nano breweries for success. Their new 3.5-barrel Pro Surface electric brewing system cuts maintenance and saves at least 30 minutes per brew with powerful under kettle heating. From 1 to 15-barrel brew houses to keg washers and grain mills, Blickman has what you need. Ready to go pro? Contact Filler Tom at Pro Series at Blickman. Pro Series at BlickmanEngineering.com. Blickman Engineering is a proud sponsor of this channel and loves to help brewers at every stage of their journey. It says some can't post comments to some destinations. We'll see. So I am messing around with attempting to stream on multiple platforms here. Let's see if I'm gonna ruin everything by doing this. Yeah, I am actually. I am streaming on Twitch. Bless Bless my heart. I don't know. So one of the reasons that I have added Twitch as one of the channels that I work with is I'm thinking about doing some, I don't know, maybe some like live stream work stuff, like in brewery work stuff. So I am messing around with that platform. If you are a fan of that platform, let me know. It's interesting. I went to a conference recently for content creators, and I met a guy that was not doing some streaming. He streams full time. Interesting stuff. But anyways, also speaking of interesting stuff, tracking and managing the financial health of your brewery is a primary pillar of success. Check out my boy David Lentz at Brewed Fiscally. This man has the industry experience and skills you need so you can focus on growing your business. Bookkeeping, fractional CFO support, financial management system design, business plan review, hit up your boy. Check him out at brewedfiscally.com or shoot him an email at david@brewedfiscally.com. He's good people. Again, welcome to the chat. You know, these career development podcasts are always interesting for me because, you know, it's funny when we're in here and people are asking questions and we're doing our thing. It's when it's brewing related, stuff pops off the top of the dome. And so being that we're looking specifically at some more career-based stuff, sometimes my brain moves a little bit slower because what I try to do with this podcast, if this is the first time you're listening to it, this isn't one where we're going to be digging into a ton of technical brewing stuff or really at all. We're going to be looking at developing some of those skills, though, that can really help grow your career in this industry. I think a lot of us know, you know, how we got our jobs in this field. And sometimes we feel as if after 5, 10, 15, 20 years that we have a job and not a career. And so that's one of the reasons that we do what we do here at Adam Makes Beer. I like to, with these podcasts, take something that I've listened to, an author that I like, dig into some of their material, and kind of talk around that. I've read maybe just one book off the top of my head. I'm not certain which book it is from Adam Grant that I've read, but he is a Simon Sinek adjacent guy. If you're familiar with Simon Sinek, if you've not listened to the first career development pod that we did, we covered understanding your why for what we're doing in this industry and what you're, you know, what really makes us tick, what keeps us happy, what has us passionate about our work. And I think that Adam Grant is one of those guys that's a little bit Simon Sinek adjacent. And I actually ended up finding out about Adam Grant by listening to a talk that Simon Sinek was giving, where he said for a long time he was dealing with jealousy with another author. He would track his sales compared to the other person's sales, their podcast views, different things like that. And I think it's really interesting because as far as the leadership development world, Simon Sinek is crushing it. And I'm pretty sure he's pretty darn close to rich, if not wealthy. And so from a career standpoint, you know, the guys made it, but there can be that jealousy, right? And sometimes you end up building up in your mind what that other person is like, how they're your nemesis. I don't know if you ever experienced something like that. I know maybe I have. So, but that's what originally turned me on to Adam Grant. Adam Grant is a psychologist. Maybe he's a psychiatrist. Hey, Adam, do you know the difference? No. I know one can prescribe meds and the other one can't. But I know he's a PhD guy, and he's done a lot of work in the, career space. And I listened to a podcast not too long ago from him about dealing with conflict in the brewery. So this is going out there for everybody that is in here live in the chat. You don't need to use your real name. You don't need to use the brewery's name, and please don't use somebody else's name. But if as we're going through this stuff today, if you feel as if there was a circumstance at work that hit you and you didn't know how to handle it, drop it in here. Not everything is going to fit within the space of kind of the confines of this talk, but we'll fit in what we can. And one of the things that I want to do, and one of the reasons why I love doing these podcasts live, is I love giving people the opportunity to be in the chat, to interact with me and with each other, because I believe very firmly that people need community. We need positive, uplifting forces in our life. I am somebody that throughout my life, I've just always had, high quality people of character around me. And I was under the assumption for almost my entire adult life that just everybody had that. And I didn't realize how fortunate I was to have that around me. So one of my goals with what we're doing here is to try to create that for, some of us may have it, some of us may not. So please feel free to drop questions, circumstances, scenarios in the chat today as we go. Again, keep them, general. We don't want to be calling people out on the old YouTube machine, but yeah. So today's podcast title is Dealing with Conflict in the Brewery, and this is what really perked my ears up when I was listening to the Adam Grant stuff. He said, conflict isn't toxic, it's fuel. How to harness task conflict in the brew house. He didn't say brew house because he didn't talk about breweries, but that's our lens. So today we're going to be unpacking how some brewing conflicts aren't a sign of dysfunction. They're opportunities to make better beer together. As always, as we go through this stuff, I'm going to be relating things to my work experience. I'll be talking about scenarios and mistakes that I have made and maybe still struggle with. And the reason I share that is because I want other people to learn from my experience. The thing that I loved about this podcast is every time I think about the word conflict, I can get uncomfortable. I'm a people pleaser, sometimes to my detriment. I like things to be consistent, predictable. I dislike drama. So when we hear this word conflict, and sometimes when I hear this word conflict, I can tighten up a little bit on the inside, especially when it's through the lens of being managed. All right. I don't like conflict when I'm managing other people too, but I feel like I handle that a little bit different, and maybe a little bit better. In some ways, we'll dig into that as we go. There could be some ego at play there because everybody's got it, and we're all trying to work through it. But I do also think that coaching is something that comes a little bit more natural to me, and I'm a little bit less comfortable when I am experiencing conflict from above, when I'm experiencing conflict with people that manage me. A big reason is because I have worked a lot of my career being afraid of losing my job. I left teaching. I taught for 10 years and I was tenured. And quite frankly, you kind of have to almost break the law in order to lose your tenured teaching job. And then I entered the brewing industry, and I realized that there's not that safety net. You have to make your own safety net in this field. And through my lens as a father of 6, obviously that wasn't the entire time I was in the industry, but as a father of 6, you want to be able to support your family. And a lot of times I would keep my mouth shut and not know how to handle these conflict scenarios, especially with somebody that is in a management position above me. So, Adam Grant on his Work Life podcast, he has a podcast called Work Life. I think it's through TED Talks. And he has one, The Science of Productive Conflict. I recommend you checking it out. This is kind of the basis of what I am working with today. I find it fascinating, his outlook on this idea that conflict within the brewery isn't just unavoidable, but it can be beneficial. He goes on to talk about there being 2 types of conflict. And we're going to kind of dig into the basics of this right now. And he makes the point that not all conflict is created equal. First of all, he says there's task conflict. These are disagreements over ideas, decisions, processes that can drive innovation. Some examples of that, anybody that's in the brew house knows, some of the things that there could be conflict over. Brew day schedule, beer lineup between marketing and brewers. I don't know if you're aware, but sometimes marketing and brewers want to make different beer. Process concepts, dry hop timing. We've been talking a lot on the channel lately about lagers. Everybody has their own ideas as far as that goes, and sometimes people can think that what they know is best, that their research is best. So there are these task conflicts that are centered around ideas, decisions, or processes. But then we have one that's a little bit more challenging in some ways, which is a relationship conflict. These are when issues become personal, people versus people, not issue versus issue. And they can become destructive and toxic. I'm not always a huge fan of that term toxic, but you use it occasionally. Also, side note, these things are my little things back here because I've been made fun of that the wall behind me makes me look like I'm in prison. For the second time I've gotten that comment from people I know. So it's not even like the internet horde in the comments is weighing in on this. So I did try to stick some of my things up, and I have the adorable wooden Adam mix. You can't quite see it's carved AMB in there. The YouTube thing back there, my kids made that. But I don't know how I got off on that. But the relationship conflict stuff, when issues become personal, people versus people, not issue versus issue, and this can become detrimental. This is something that I have fallen into many, many times in my career. I can fail at this in a few ways. I can fail when I'm being in a situation where I'm being managed and I feel afraid for my job. I think more often than not, when I've made that assumption, it was a conclusion that I spun up in my own head. It was a figment of my imagination. I am a bit of a spiraler, okay? I love connecting with people, talking to people, and getting like positive social cues and feedback. And sometimes the flip side of that is when communication falls flat, whether because there's an actual conflict, it happened via text, it happened via email, where it's difficult to interpret tone, I have this little thing in the back of my mind that will continue to turn that over and over. And I will begin to compile cues and to create a situation where I sense danger. All right. And in the workplace, that means that I feel less safe in my job. Okay. That's one thing that I do that is, it's a bad way to handle things. Another way that I struggle on this relationship conflict side is when I feel as if someone doesn't trust me. I'm human, just like all of you out there, and I fail at it, but I try very, very hard to be trustworthy. I work hard, I try to be dependable, and I work really, really hard to tell the truth to people. It's something that I take very seriously. When I feel as if somebody doesn't trust me, that hits something very core inside of me and hurts something very core inside of me. Another ways that I fail, and I have failed in the past on this relationship conflict front, is when I allow myself to get frustrated by things. Some of the things I've already mentioned, but these tiny little cues. And sometimes it can be something that I am inferring, or something, maybe that's not the right word. Maybe it's something that it's a sense that I'm getting from the other person. And maybe sometimes it is a failure of the other person. But I allow myself to get frustrated. And then it starts out small and gets larger and larger and larger. And if there's anything that I have learned to be true during these 48 years, is that if you have something that you are avoiding, an issue that you are avoiding, it gets larger and larger and scarier and scarier. And in this case, it would build into frustration with people and eventually anger. A lot of those, have you ever had the argument in your head in the shower with somebody, what they'll say and what you'll say, or on the drive into work? I have to. Not healthy. Adam Grant in this podcast said a meta-analysis across 100 plus studies. So just FYI, I didn't always know what a meta-analysis was. It's a compilation of many, many studies. Okay. So it kind of carries a little bit more weight from a scientific standpoint. A meta-analysis across 100 plus studies and 8,000 teams found relationship conflict reduces performance, but moderate task conflict improves creativity and decisions. Let me give you a little story about something that has to fit in on the task conflict side. Real life story. Anecdote. There's a period of time where I was working at a brewery, and we were starting to dive into hazies. Hazies had already popped off, but really everybody by this point was like, hey, listen, we need to get into the hazy game. And there was going to be a hazy pale ale that I did. And at this point, I was managed by another brewer. And in a situation where I didn't quite necessarily feel safe from an employment standpoint, because you're working for somebody, and sometimes things can be awkward. They wanted me to do something in this hazy pale ale that my experience and research told me was incorrect. So we had a hazy pale, and it was probably going to get 1.5 pounds per barrel dry hop, and maybe up to 2 pounds But my manager wanted me to slide a good portion of that dry hop into day one of fermentation. Okay, so when people were playing with fermentation, dry hops, and really chasing biotransformation. We won't dive into this topic right now, even though I feel compelled to dig into it. But I knew by reading the research from Omega that if we were to dry hop at that portion of the fermentation, that it increased the likelihood that that beer was going to drop clear. And I knew that we wanted a hazy beer. So we have a situation where we have a task conflict, right? I disagreed with this practice based on the research that I had done, but I didn't voice my opinion or research that I had read. I knew the dry hop wasn't going to be big enough on the flip side of this either to contribute significant haze, so I knew we were going to more than likely get a clear beer. Well, we got a clear beer, and thankfully, this was a situation where some of my I need a job paranoia was able to be settled down a little bit. As the beer dropped clear in the fermenter, I was able to have that conversation with my employer. And the nice thing is that I had the guts to bring it up, but they were also willing to listen. Okay. And I was able to make changes in the process and in subsequent beers that would help our hazy beers stay hazy. Okay. So that's kind of my real life example of a time where I had a task conflict with somebody, but we were able to kind of work it out and build toward something more productive. Now, the hope is when you set the foundation of having that happen, you can kind of build a culture of open communication around things. And this is why these task conflicts can be an opportunity for a level up for you, the team you're working with, your management, and everything like that. No conflict does not mean harmony. Sometimes it means just apathy or worse. Give me a shout in the chat if you've ever felt like you got stomped down in a certain way and you had that conflict that just kind of beat you down and you found yourself not feeling about something that you're passionate about. It's happened to me. No conflict doesn't mean harmony. Sometimes it's just apathy or worse. In his podcast, Adam Grant reminds us the absence of conflict is not harmony, it's apathy. Those who do not speak up don't care enough to challenge. It's really important to many of us brewers for people to care. When people care, safety and quality are more of a sure thing. And, you know, for so many of us in this field, what we do is passion driven. And so to have that flame extinguished, it's one of the things that can start people into a spiral of when people talk about burnout in our field. There's a lot of things that go into burnout. Maybe we'll do one of these. Maybe we'll do a pod on it, but this is certainly one of them. Ignoring brewing disagreements like hop additions, recipe tweaks, the dry hop thing that I had talked about before, it can stifle creativity and lead to stagnation in the brew house. I've had situations where new practices, process aids, or techniques were suggested either by me or by somebody that was a member of the team that I was a part of. After the ideas were not given an honest effort, it made me want to give up or at least be less willing to bring new ideas to the table. If you're going to look at this through a management lens, you can look at it through a management lens and through an employee lens. One of the things that I think is really important from an employee lens is I think it's important the way you question the practices that are happening in the brewery that you work in. I like to make a habit of, because I am somebody that tries to constantly be learning new things, I try to stay up on my podcast, on my research papers. Anytime I come across something like that, I like to share it with people on the brewing side of the business. Email, Slack, whatever you're using, text. And it's a good way of saying, hey, I was listening to this. I would love to get your feedback on it. I'd love to break this down with you, what they're talking about in this podcast. So say for instance, you weren't super up on your enzyme game, and that, and you listen to this podcast where people are talking about ALDC, and that you're in a production place and you're losing multiple days per fermentation on a big packaging beer that you make, waiting for diacetyl to clear up, and you're tight on tank space. Bring it up like that. Say, hey, I listen to this. What do you think about this? I'd love to have your feedback on it. Do you think that's something that, like maybe we can try and maybe it would do this for us? I would always approach it through that, right? Rather than saying, dude, we totally need to be using ALDC, depending on your relationship with your boss or with your other team members, right? But yeah. I do think it's important, the tone that you bring to the table when you're doing those things. Because when that culture is set, trying new things and aiming to always get better just becomes who you are. All right. And let's try to avoid this kind of mental slide that we can go down when we say something like, well, it's just a process suggestion, to, oh, you hate my suggestion, you don't like me, or something like that. This is where Adam Grant kind of talks about this ladder of inference. Okay. Many times I find that how we interpret facts, make assumptions, and leap to conclusions is often unnecessary. For example, if a brewer questions a recipe change, the head brewer interprets it, or can interpret it, as a challenge to their authority, not curiosity. That's where tone comes from, asking questions and asking them in the right way. We need to be digging into our assumptions. For instance, saying things like, help me understand why you see it that way. I think these are positive ways of building that culture of everyone getting better, rather than having our conflicts become something personal rather than process-based. So, now we have ourselves in this situation where, yeah, we've got a conflict. What are some of the ways that we can approach them to make this brewery function better and for us to be happier in our job? Once again, shout out to everybody in the chat. I see you out there lurking. Make sure to say hi in the chat. Drop any questions, comments, scenarios around conflicts in the brew house that you've seen and might want another take on, or just from your own input, maybe something that's worked well for you. So some of the tips that Adam Grant gets into when it comes to dealing with conflict, he says, debate how and not why. Asking, how will this hop schedule work, invites clarity. Asking, why are you doing this, leads to defensiveness. Again, asking, how will this hop schedule work, invites clarity. Asking, why are you doing it, leads to defensiveness. Again, I think tone is important when we're asking questions. And also something that I'm working on, side note, for those of you that don't know, that haven't been listening to the channel long or anything like that, I have some like dietary, like inflammatory issues. And so there's a lot of things that I can't eat. And just recently, we've been traveling a little bit, different weddings, lots of change going on around the old Mills household. And we are out celebrating a birthday. It was another thing that was busy lately when I turned 48. And we went out with the family just for kind of a family day. And I had eaten some stuff that I kind of rolled the dice on, and I don't typically. Usually I don't eat food that I don't fully prepare in the house, or my wife fully prepares in the house, because that's just what my diet demands. And one of the things is when I have a mess up and when I eat something that I can't have, I start carrying a bunch of water weight, and it really messes with my levels of anxiety. And so here's a little call out to kind of our level of self-awareness. There's a difference between being self-focused and being self-aware. An ongoing struggle for me is being self-focused. I want to be more focused on the people around me and the beautiful things that happen around me every day. When I do that, I'm a much happier person. When I am self-focused, that is when I am my most miserable. So how this blends in here, when it comes to having that conversation with a coworker, with a manager, with a boss, I do think it's important to be aware of what you're bringing to the table from a mental standpoint that day, from an energy standpoint, from a vibe standpoint. There's times where I'm coming in hot and I don't even know it. My wife is a great sounding board for me for that. She's very sweet. And she's pretty quick to notice when my mind is revving and I'm not aware of it, and there's nothing wrong, but I'm just being a little bit sharp or snappy. It's really, really important that we have a good understanding of where we're at when we're going in to have these conversations, right? Make sure you're in the right headspace. I think that will go a long way to framing your questions within the way you want to for a productive conversation. The next point he makes is obligation to dissent. Encourage team members to voice opposing views early and constructively. It strengthens decision making. Even if you're in a situation where you're not, leading the whole team, sometimes there's still somebody that's, technically your junior. It's a really good thing to have to speak to all of those people in a way that encourages people to get better, to let them know that your goal is to get better. And really your goal is for us, this brewery, to be better. It's better for that to be driven. It's better for that sentiment to be driven by enthusiasm as opposed to intensity. All right. And sometimes it's difficult, especially because it's such a passion-based industry. Sometimes that comes across as intensity. And we need to be able to curb that a little bit sometimes if you want to be heard the way you want to be heard. Challenge networks. Cultivate a team who challenges assumptions, not just affirms them. This is your innovation fuel. You may have listen, ladies and gentlemen, I need to upgrade my thing here. But even if you're not in a situation where you are working in a team, I think it's worth having the conversation with the other people that you're attached to about what's important to you. and doing things safely in a quality manner is the primary driver, or hopefully is the primary driver behind what we're doing with beer. Make sure that that is known to people and that you want to be building something with them. Use problem solution slots. I don't know where this is from, but what was this? Is this could be anything from a TV show to something that I learned from somebody else. I think this was a human being that taught me this. They were a manager, and they had a member of their team bring them a problem and just drop it on their desk and walk away. And he said, what I hate is when I'm working with my team and they feel like they can walk into the office, drop a turd on my desk, and walk out. That made me laugh. Use problem solution slots. Frame conflict as here's the problem, here's a proposed fix. This helps to keep discussions task focused and inspired by broader conflict research. So when you have an issue, be able to vocalize what it is in a non-emotional manner and then have some proposed fixes. And I like to have reasons for, like backup for them as well. But approach that as a sit down where you're not just shoving a problem at somebody and saying, you fix it, but saying, here's a problem and let's fix this together. Okay. There are times when conflict does get personal. Sometimes conflict crosses into chemistry where egos or emotions get in the way. What do we do then? You have to be able to distinguish relationship conflict when the clash is personal and not process driven. And when that happens, we need to use mediation and structured collaboration. And here are some buzz sounding words for you. Active listening, neutral spaces, or even having a third party, right? Having a neutral third party walk through something with the two of you, finding common ground. And again, I think the common ground can always be what is best for safety, quality, and efficiency, right? Make sure you have those rallying points with those people and say, hey, listen, this is what we're driving for. And this is something that I'm seeing. And I want to try to be able to work through this. How can we find where we need to be with this? One of the things that when we talk about that emotions and ego can get in the way, I can't have those meetings or those sit downs without a bullet point list. I may be a little bit more of a slower processor than you, but for me, I need to have a bullet point list of all my problems or all the issues that are going on. And then I will usually sit down with my wife and we'll go through them and we'll look at things that we can weed out. Okay. What are the things here that are purely hurt my feelings? Okay. And it's probably just a problem on my side. What are the things that I can drop off of this list that are just things that could be heaping on? Because you're almost like making a case against the other person because it's gotten personal, right? What are the bare bones functional things that need to be discussed in order to move forward? Okay. I usually will bounce them off some friends as well. And I kind of like workshop the conversation and talk to them about what I want to talk to them about. And then the issues that I have with the other person. And I'll ask them to listen to me being too emotional about something. Okay. Not that there's anything wrong with emotion. I'm an emotional guy. Speaking of which, I'm dropping my daughter off at college, and she told me that if I don't cry when I drop her off, she's going to be mad at me. She's probably there's probably no danger of that not happening. Or maybe put another way, I'm definitely going to cry. But and we kind of dipped in on this a little bit already, but it said kind of teach conflict language. I think conflict language is when you remove the emotion, when you get down to bare bones issues, and you are aimed at finding practical solutions. Okay? It's good to be able to use phrases like, can you walk me through how you see that working? Depending on your tone, that can be something that helps to kind of diffuse defensiveness. And after you have this conflict, after conflict has happened, you need to have time to reflect afterwards. Did our disagreement make the beer or our brewery better, and how? Okay. In general, if you're rolling on the relationship side of conflict, generally those things, they're not building the team up. They're not building the brewery up. Conflict isn't a sign you failed. It's a sign that you care. Coach your team or work on developing within yourself to build better ideas, to come up with better ideas. I think sometimes we get caught up on the knowledge that we think we have, but we need to be open to new and different ways of doing things. One of the things I've learned by going into so many breweries and doing these long form brewing videos, there's so many ways to get things done. And I learn something in every place I go to. I would encourage you to check out this Science of Productive Conflict podcast. One note in this, and I'll say this right now. I don't know if anybody is, if anyone has noticed or not. I don't touch politics at all on this channel. The reason I don't do that, I feel as if it's because it's everywhere. And I think we need a break from it. And if you are coming to this podcast, I don't think we need to be bombarded in this space as well with that. So just one note on that podcast, they do talk about a company that had conflict, and it was built around a political issue. And they talked about that. And it's not like the point of it, including it in the podcast, is not to be partisan. I didn't take it that way at all. So if you do listen to it, it's not a suggestion toward the political at all. I think there's some valuable stuff in there to look at. I do think, as always, you're always going to hear me talk about in this career development pod, if you're not doing your prayer, meditation, or mindfulness, you're going to be in a worse spot than if you hadn't. Is that the right way to say it? You need to be doing those things, okay? Get that 10 to 15 minutes every day. For me, it's prayer. For you, it can be mindfulness. For you, it can be meditation. But to get yourself centered. For me in particular, to where I am not self-focused, that's just something that I work on. But when you start doing that, you can start more effectively breaking down these scenarios of conflict in the workplace, in the brewery, and also in your personal life. And when you have some time to reflect on that, you can look at how you may have been able to approach that differently. My big personal takeaway, if you're going to learn anything from me and my experience, in the industry, but even just in relationships and everything. Don't spin things up. Don't give. Have conversations rather than making assumptions. I think that's the safest way to do that. Okay. But ladies and gents, it's going to be a busy weekend for me. I am going to try to have a pod next week, but this is going to kind of wrap up what we have going on with this topic. Please leave your feedback on these career development topics that we're doing. It's really helpful for me. Jake in the chat asks, how long have you been in the industry? Jake, I've been I taught for 10 years, and then I've been brewing professionally for 14 years, and in various ways. I've worked in anything from like a 1-barrel brew house, which was really a Sabco, which I had to turn 3 times in one day to make a barrel of beer, going into plastic fermenters with no temperature control. Don't get me started. To 30-barrel automated brew houses and larger production places and things like that. Yeah. Do you brew, Jake? Let me know, man. Let me know if you have any follow up on that. If there's a reason why you're curious. But yeah. But I would encourage you to dig in on this stuff. If this is the first career development pod that you've listened to, I'd really suggest you go back through the other ones as well, just to kind of help me keep learning how I can provide the most value for all of you. For those of you that don't know, I do content creation full time. And so anything that you do to help me online, whether it's sharing educational content that I make, whether it be on Instagram, YouTube, liking, sharing, saving, all those things are great. Bringing it up, showing it to other brewer friends of yours, that's a big help. Also giving some love to our sponsors at Blickman and Brewed Fiscally. I might have some cool things coming up here soon. So stick with me. If you're not following me on Instagram, it's the best way to do it. Facebook works, but Instagram is where most of my traffic goes on. So I do appreciate all your support out there. And until next time, like I said, I'll have something technical topic next week. We'll probably have an industry pro next week. So keep an eye out for that. I have a handful of guests lined up that with a bunch of really cool topics. So stick with me. I appreciate you being on this journey with me. Yeah, let's get better out there. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Hey, and I have intro and outro music now, so dig this.
This feeling's deeper than an ocean, with a groove that's beating harder than my heart. So baby, now just hear me out. No, don't fear this emotion, 'cause you can't stop the fire once it starts. Oh, I'll be there for you, with the love to get you through the night. Yeah, yeah. And I'll be there for you when everything